On the record in this file, for purposes of review. Yeah, I have the names of our participants, please.
Lee Heiss, lawyer, guardian ad litem.
Ms. Stasia Thomas, counsel for the department.
Kristen Smith, foster care worker, Catholic Charities.
Michael Brooks, I represent Father Ruben Zavala Garcia. Mr. Garcia?
Yes,
Identify yourself, please.
my name is Ruben Zavala Garcia.
Michael McFarland, representing mother, Caitlin Smith. Caitlin, please identify yourself.
Caitlin Smith, mother.
Thank you.
Ms. Heiss.
He's been in care at least 7 months. He is still being tested for the cause and the foundation of his remaining nonverbal. He is still not potty trained, that kind of thing. So the foster family is dedicated to his long-term care. The issues that arose this review period are both the substance use disorder of the mother and not screening positive. You know, when I see these screens that are saying negative and no shows, you know, the negative should be positive for methadone. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but I'm sure not liking showing up in May for a visit intoxicated. I would ask you to also consider that she missed the CTAC evaluation, which was supposed to give us a lot of information about their bond. The child is a high needs child. As I said, he's nonverbal, and it's critical that he attend this LISD program that he's in. It's a preschool kind of thing, and he is very high risk for meeting his developmental milestones. This mother is going to need not only just sobriety, but we're going to need her to know something about trauma that the child has been through, how to correct his behavior. The child's having OT and speech therapy. He's in classes. So mother has a transportation barrier. What I would ask you to consider is that we're 7 months in. This child needs a ride to his education program. He needs a ride so that he can do his OT and his speech. I think they might do that right at the school, but he needs to get to, I think there's a fetal alcohol evaluation that's going on. Where are her resources? It's time for her to start being capable as a parent, not just during visits. So the real breakdown in this review period was that the transportation support for mother is no longer available. So the caseworker is coming from Lenawee to Washtenaw County to pick up the child to Jackson for an extended visit and then back through to drop the child off. This child is doing okay during visits, but he has a lot going on. And I think that if mom can't be independent in getting his needs met, it's a concern. It isn't our normal concern, but in addition to her mental health treatment and her substance use disorder treatment, which may be going better than we know, but her counselor isn't getting back a hold of the social worker. So I'd ask you to consider that I agree with the agency that another review period is needed, but that the no-shows for drug screens, being positive for methamphetamine as recently as July 5th. This child deserves permanence. He needs to know where he's going to grow up. The families are are interested in his permanence too. They've been there. The placement has been there for Mateo since he was basically born. They were in his life, and his grandparents too. I joined the agency in asking for another review period. And if it becomes an issue, this letter from mom, I would like to review, maybe even, it's several pages long and it's got some concerns in there that I really would like a minute to review, but I'll try and get that done as we go through the hearing. That concludes my report.
Your Honor, based on Ms. Heiss's last comment, I would request a 5-minute recess. Mr. McFarland received an email from his client in which he presented to me and Ms. Heiss. We have not been able to review that email, but I believe that it would be beneficial for us to do so before I call Ms. Smith so I can tailor questions to address that as well.
I have no objection. It was just presented to me by my secretary as I was walking in the courtroom. I can make copies for Mr. Brooks and for actually all counsel. Yeah.
Any objection, Mr. Brooks?
No.
Very well, we'll be in recess for,
Sorry.
good, how are you?
All right, thank you. For today's hearing, you have provided a court report and several attachments. It looks like it's about 100 pages. And that includes a case service plan, the ICLA mailing receipts and determination letters, an LISD screening for the child, the IEP report, CTAC, the FASD screening, CMH recommendation regarding parenting time, and several other attachments, I should say. Are there any updates or modifications that need to be made to your court report or any of the attachments?
No.
At this time, the child remains placed outside of the parent's care and custody, is that correct?
Yes.
And that is a relative placement?
Yes.
And is that maternal relative?
Yes.
Do you believe that the relative placement is the least restrictive environment to ensure the child's safety?
I do.
What would the risk of harm be to the child if the court were to return him to either parent's care and custody today?
At this time, exposure to possible substance use, unstable, I don't want to say housing, housing's appropriate, but with her financial aspect at this moment, in order for his needs to be met, I don't think that's able to be met in her care at this time. She does struggle with transportation assistance. Jackson does have public transportation, so that could be a possibility, but at this time, transportation assistance. Mateo also does have some significant needs at this time, and where Caitlin is at in her case service plan, I don't think that she's able to meet those needs yet.
And as it relates to Mr. Zavala Garcia?
He remains incarcerated, I believe, with a possible release date of October of 2024.
What services are being offered or have been offered to Ms. Smith as it relates to reducing or rectifying the barriers to reunification?
So for specifically to substance abuse, she is participating in methadone maintenance at Victory Clinic. She also engages in individual counseling once a week there and a once a week drug screen through Victory. She also participates in AA and NA meetings. Those have been both virtually and some in person. I know she struggled with getting a sponsor. Myself and her substance abuse counselor at Victory were trying to work together, but it was hard to find her a sponsor. She did report that she found one. However, I think that's changed recently. Forensic fluids, drug screens twice a week. Either we screen her during parenting times or she can screen at Family Services and Children's Aid. For transportation, the agency can provide her and has provided her with bus tickets. And we've talked about gas cards. However, at this time, because she doesn't have a reliable vehicle or somebody else to take her, the gas cards recently have not been provided to her. But the agency does provide transportation assistance to her son for parenting times. Up until today, to my knowledge, Ms. Smith was employed. So employment assistance hasn't been provided to Caitlin. Family team meetings have been offered and facilitated. General foster care case management services, a referral for a psychiatric evaluation.
Earlier in your testimony, it relates to the barriers to reunification. You mentioned the significant needs of the child and where mom is at her case service plan, perhaps limited ability to meet those needs. During this review period, have there been any services or referrals made specifically to that parent education component, understanding the child's needs, bonding, anything like that?
Mateo did have a CTAC on May 4th, I believe, the day before his CTAC. And Caitlin was scheduled to attend her portion of the bonding assessment. That was the parenting time that she appeared to be and later admitted to had recently used, and that visit was ended. Following that visit, when her and I spoke, I explained to her what her portion would be the next day, and she agreed that essentially she wanted me to cancel her portion because she didn't want to go in the state of mind and her being under the influence to his assessment. So I let CTAC know that she would not be there. I believe they reached out to her as well. And then when we had the FTM following the CTAC to discuss the recommendations and how we were going to move further, at that point too, it was also explained, that her portion could be rescheduled.
To the best of your knowledge, has it been rescheduled?
I do not believe so.
So my records indicate that Ms. Smith's review portion, last review hearing, the portion for her took place April 4th, 2023, and then we came back for Dad's portion April 21st. Since then, how many screens have been positive for substances?
I can't give you an exact number. I would, without looking at my report, I would say 4, maybe 5.
And have those all been addressed with her?
Yes.
And has she offered an explanation as to why they may be positive for substances? The one that was positive, I believe, May 3rd, or it would have been around that May 3rd. That was the visit date that was canceled. She did admit to using the night before. The 2 most recent screens, I believe, 6/28 and 7/5. I sent her a text message asking her to call me so we could just talk. She didn't respond. So the following day we had a visit anyways. So I let her know that I had emailed the court report, but that I was bringing her a hard copy to the visit, as well as the drug screen results. So at that time, because I was also transporting Mateo, I explained that I don't discuss, this case or case sensitive information during any parenting time, but that we could meet afterwards. And I just provided her with the 1-page screen results. Your report, it shows a positive fentanyl screen on 4/12 and then positive for methamphetamine 5/3, 5/8, and 5/10. Was the 5/8 and 5/10 dates, is it believed that that is still residual from on May 2nd?
I believe so, yes, because to my recollection, the levels did drop. I don't think that she had used again, but I do believe that it was still from that one use.
Historically, do you recall what the drug abuse is?
Fentanyl.
I
And
didn't hear that.
Fentanyl,
Thank you.
and methamphetamine is not fentanyl, correct?
correct.
So if you could speak up a little as you go, maybe move the mic in and maybe that'll help.
So the methamphetamine is not typically her drug of choice.
Correct.
At this time, what is the parenting time schedule?
At this point, parenting time is scheduled in our Jackson office on Wednesdays from 12:30 to 2:30.
And that's a reduction from twice a week because of transportation barriers.
Correct. It was at the same FTM following Mateo's CTAC that the family actually brought it up. There wasn't going to be a change to the parenting time at that point in time. But the family had stated that they could just temporarily not transport, but that they would be willing to transport later down the road. There was a family member that they're caring for in the house, and they have a lot going on. So at that point, everybody had agreed that, the agency could transport. However, at that time, we weren't sure how long that would be. And for the agency to provide transportation to 3 different counties twice a week isn't feasible. So it was discussed and everybody agreed that they should utilize FaceTime, phone calls, anything like that in between the week. And then Caitlin and I did speak a couple times about how we could pick back up that Monday visit. And hopefully if she could get to Adrian, that would still have the agency going to get Mateo and bringing him to Adrian. And she said that she would work on a vehicle situation for that and notify me when she could do so.
Now, she currently does not have a license.
Correct. Up until recently, she had told me that she did have a driver's license, and then when I asked her if it was valid or suspended, she did say it was suspended, but that she wasn't essentially in a hurry to get that taken care of because she didn't have a vehicle.
And as it relates to the child, he has undergone several assessments, evaluations, and exams. Are there any outstanding referrals that need to be made or assessments that are pending?
No, right now and I'm not sure if it was after I submitted the report, we're in the process of getting him on the wait list for the FASD assessment, and that's through Spectrum in Grand Rapids. They had just sent the caregiver actually today some documents that need to be sent to them. And then he also had an autism evaluation or assessment through Washtenaw County CMH. We haven't received that report yet. The caregiver just said that after the assessment, they had noted that he was borderline, but that the full report would give more details, and then recommendations or referrals would be made.
What is your current position on expanding parenting time?
As long as Caitlin maintains her sobriety, we were hoping to go to unsupervised parenting time. I've assessed the home. Clearances have been ran on the individual who resides in the home. Obviously, transportation is still going to be an issue regardless if it's, the agency doing transporting or a caregiver.
Your report indicates that when mom appeared for that parenting time, when she used in May, she was unable to parent, correct?
Correct.
And do you believe that if she were to use, she would, and there would be unsupervised parenting time, the child would be at a risk of harm?
Absolutely.
How long would you like to see clean and consistent drug screens before determining the child would be safe in her home, unsupervised?
I would suggest 45 days.
And are there any barriers to her screening in Jackson?
For her, transportation, however, the agency, if she's selected to screen on a visit day, which right now is Wednesdays, we screen her at our location so she doesn't have to go to 2 separate places. If it's not on a Wednesday, then she'll have to screen at Family Services and Children's Aid.
The no-shows that you have listed on here, are any of those visit days that she should have been screening with you?
I I don't believe so. Because I know that I've screened, except for this last visit, because she had screened the day before. I believe she's been screened at every visit. The no-shows are for when we register clients for forensic fluids. It'll explain that, you know, our, whatever the testing location, their hours are. But they're instructed that if they have to screen on Saturday or Sunday and they're called, then they need to come on Monday. So some of the no-shows are from weekends that she didn't go to on Monday.
Is there anything you would like to highlight from your court report for the court's attention?
No.
Your Honor, at this time, I would move to admit the court report with its attachments.
No objection.
No objection.
No objection.
Thank you, they are received.
Yes, if I heard you correctly, your agency's position is a no-show for a drug test is considered a positive test, am I correct?
I believe yes, in case service plans that are created, no-shows are considered
Is
positive.
that your position today?
Yes.
And it sounds as though she's testing through your agency or where your agency wants her to test, and also she's testing weekly at her own drug rehab, correct?
Correct.
So any of those weeks when she tested positive through your agency or your contracted drug testing facilities, did she test negative afterwards at her drug rehab?
I'm not 100% sure or how to answer that, because when I spoke with her substance abuse counselor, the information that she can provide me with is very specific and limited. So when I reached out to her counselor, concerned about her recent positive screen, because she had been, all of her screens were negative for so long. So when that positive came up, I contacted her substance abuse counselor. But she was only able to tell me what she screened negative for, and that she was negative for opiates, and that's why she is screening at their location. She said, I can't tell you what she was positive for.
Okay, but she's aware of, so they could address any issues that they saw at their end, correct?
Yes, and when I further spoke with her, I asked her, you know, hypothetically, because she's not receiving the methadone maintenance, obviously for methamphetamine, she's using it for opiates. You know, essentially what's her position, and like, what would it look like when you do have a client who starts using? And she says that they won't increase the methadone dosage, and that they will speak with the client and essentially give them like a warning. And she did say, I have already had this conversation with Caitlin.
Okay. Transportation seems to be an issue with my client in the letter that she sent to us. She lives in Jackson County, the child's in, I believe, in Clinton, correct?
Yes.
Oh,
Manchester.
Manchester, okay, in Washtenaw County.
Yes.
Why do they meet in Adrian if they're both in different counties? Why aren't they meeting someplace either in Washtenaw or in Jackson County?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Well, Jackson is in Washtenaw County.
Correct.
And she lives in Jackson County. And they're meeting in Lenawee County, am I correct?
No, we're transporting him to Jackson County.
Okay, must have changed since the letter was written. Okay.
No, we've never had a visit in Adrian since I've had this case in April.
Okay. Did I hear you say correctly that if she could maintain sobriety for a period of time, 30 days or something, you consider the child being returned to her? Did I hear you correctly?
No, not return. I would, before the recent positive screens and when we did have the FTM, we all were talking about unsupervised visits. So at this point, we would want the discretion to allow for unsupervised visits as long as she could maintain sobriety for 45 days.
Understand. Did she indicate to you what her trigger was in May that caused her to relapse?
She did not.
Did you ask her?
Yes, in the conversation that we had during that visit, she had just stated that she was very overwhelmed, you know, with services, with everything that was on her plate. At that point, myself and my supervisor had encouraged her and offered to take her to Lifeways because she did mention suicide while in the presence of Mateo. She stated that she had to be at work at 3 o'clock, and no matter how much we tried to get her to get to Lifeways, she refused that service at the time.
She seems to have a lot on her palette right now. Where should she be focusing her efforts on the case service plan?
Maintaining, her sobriety, which I feel like up until the recent, positive screen, I thought that, she had a really good handle on that. And at this point, it would just be employment and transportation assistance of, any kind, whether it, because we had went back and forth, okay, the boyfriend, we ran clearances, he's appropriate. He did have, I believe it was a DUI, but that was 13 years ago. So we had discussed, okay, he has a vehicle, maybe then Caitlin would drive. But then we found out Caitlin's driver's license was suspended. So, some kind of transportation assistance. I've asked for FTMs between everybody, whether the relative could do one piece, we could do one piece, Caitlin could be responsible for one. We have to come up with some kind of plan where it's not solely anybody's responsibility to get, Mateo to these visits. But the family at this point is unwilling to meet for an FTM or offer transportation.
My client has limited resources for transportation and the provider can't. Do you have a solution for that?
Well, it wasn't, I spoke briefly with Caitlin on this, but, I recently tried to explain to the caregiver as well as the grandmother, that it's our responsibility to make sure that the needs are being met of the child, whether they're with a relative or a licensed foster home. And if they can't meet those needs, then maybe we should explore placements, that can. Obviously, we would not want to take a child from a relative placement. But at this point, reunification is the goal and parenting time is important, and Caitlin is making it, to the parenting time. So right now, transportation is the biggest piece in our case.
Lastly, she given an opportunity to retest. She given the results immediately after the test so she can retest if she wishes to.
The date that I contacted her and asked her to call me, she didn't call me. So the next day, she was provided with a positive screen, and on there it does have the contact information.
I guess kind of what I'm asking, what's the time lapse? Is she tested that day and notified the next day, or how does that work?
It depends how long the agency holds the screens for. I know at Family Services and Children's Aid, they get a lot of drug screens. So they will ship them all out in one UPS package. I would say at least twice a week. With our agency, we don't have that many clients that are screening at our location at least. So I normally send hers out the next day, and within 24 hours, the result will be. So it just depends when it's put in the mail.
Nothing further.
Mr. Brooks?
This child is 3 years old, if I recall, correct?
Yes.
And how long has his father been in prison?
I do not know the date that he was incarcerated.
Your knowledge, has he ever met the child?
No, he has not.
Do you know what services, if any, are available at the prison for him to sort of play catch up with the things we would usually do here?
Yeah, it sounds like there's a decent amount of services. He actually provided me with a letter that's included in the court report. He's engaging in some college education classes, I believe a domestic violence class. I have sent him packets and information on substance abuse, parenting education.
Do you know if he's read them or responded to them in any way?
Yes, he responded that letter is also included in the court report, thanking the agency essentially for the efforts. And then he did state that he has a lot on his plate and he would like to focus on essentially what he is already engaging in, and respectfully declined.
Did he tell you what he is engaging in?
Yes, the college education
Oh,
courses and domestic violence.
Okay. Does he strike you as being open to working with you if he had the ability to do it or no?
I mean, that's hard to say. He appears, motivated while he's incarcerated.
All right. That's all I have. Thank you, ma'am.
The housing that you reviewed for mother, is that housing in her name?
I have not received a copy of a recent lease. I do know that the previous worker, she did receive an email from the landlord stating that it was a month-to-month lease. I believe, yes, it is in Caitlin's name.
So Caitlin, is she able to attend these evaluations, the OT or the speech therapy? Is she attending any of that?
No, that's part of his preschool day, essentially.
Is she keeping in contact with those providers that you know of?
Not to my knowledge.
She's been provided with the CTAC that the child took.
Yes.
And has she done any of this education around trauma? Do you know whether she's done any of that information, any of that training?
No, not that I'm aware of.
She's not practicing any of his speech exercises or anything like that, or his OT therapies during her visits, is that correct?
Not necessarily, no.
The AA sheets that she's turning in, the ones online are not signed by anybody who evidences that she was at those meetings, correct?
Correct.
Are you able to test whether she's benefiting from the AA? Have you talked to a sponsor, or do you interview her about her benefit from AA or NA?
No, I have not spoken with. The only contact that I've had is with her substance abuse counselor.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Mr. Zavala Garcia has brought up in the last couple of review hearings that he has some relatives out west that he would like to be put into contact with his son. Have you been able to look into that?
No. And
His parents, I think, are in Arizona or something.
I sent him in the packet a relative search and information, and that was never sent back.
Okay.
So no, today would be the first time that has been brought up to my attention.
Okay. Well, I mean, he was asking for placement consideration at one point, but obviously his child is with some family here locally. Well, we can check with him about that in a second. He's got another daughter in Las Vegas as well. So there's that. Okay, so I think that's it for my questions. Anybody else have any redirect?
No, thank you.
No.
Thank you for your testimony. You may return your seat. Charlie?
I'd like to call my client.
Okay.
Caitlin, first of all, do you understand that this packet you had my secretary deliver to me at the courtroom has been accepted as evidence into the court for the court to read? Do you understand that?
Yep, yes,
No.
sir.
So I'm going to ask you, because I'm not going to cover what's already in this letter, because we've already, that's the reason I've submitted it. Is there anything outside of this letter that you think you need to address?
Yeah, there was a lot going on last Wednesday, so maybe Kristen, she may not have heard me, but I did, I got new employment. One reason that I quit my other job is because I was only getting paid minimum wage. So the new job that I was offered is a management position at a restaurant, making close to twice what I was making. So I'm moving forward with that.
Hang on, which restaurant?
At Pizza Hut, but it's a management position.
Okay, we're gonna need you to slow down a little bit, please.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
We're recording this and we need to make an accurate recording. So
Gotcha.
is your first paycheck coming here pretty soon?
No, I just was offered the job this past week, so I start next week with that. But I don't know if you got the things from your secretary. I still been working the last 2 weeks. I didn't get around.
Hang on, Caitlin. I told you I did receive that from my secretary.
Okay, sorry.
And we submitted that to the court. So what I'm asking you is, we can only speak one at a time, so just let me speak first and then you can respond, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so when you get your first paycheck, will you give that to the worker?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there any way that we can assist you that you haven't addressed in the letter with your transportation?
I don't think so.
Is there anything else that you think that we can provide for you that will assist you on your road to recovery and reunification with your child?
Besides transportation, but I'm working on that myself, so I don't think so.
So what are you doing to get your driver's license back if you're working on it?
Well, all I have to do is pay a couple fines. So I'm putting money away for that, and I'm putting money away for a new vehicle as well.
And how are you doing that?
This program.
You gotta speak slow because you're kind of fading in and out.
Sorry.
If you're not working,
I
how are
called
you?
DHS.
Hang on. I'm asking you a question. If you're not working,
Okay.
how are you putting money away?
I have been working.
Okay. So when you're working, you've been putting money away. How much do you have saved up towards your driver's license now?
Well, about $700 for my license and a car right now.
And how much is due on your driver's license?
$700, I think.
Okay, so you could get,
When I checked, I believe.
okay, so you could get that paid off now then, it sounds like, right?
Soon, yes, sir.
Anything that we can do since you tested positive in May and you admitted it, is there anything further that we can help you along with your recovery?
Nope, I've been clean the last couple months. As my counselor stated, the levels that were shown, I don't want to argue about this, but the levels that were shown were very small amounts. And if I was using, she said the levels would have been much higher, like in the thousands, but I don't want to argue about it. But no, I won't have any more positive screens. I'm good with that. I don't have an issue with it.
Well, I'm not going to ask you any more questions because you were pretty thorough in your letter, okay?
Okay. I do
Thank
want to
you.
say one thing, the methadone, I know there was a statement made that I wasn't showing positive for methadone, but I have an attendance record that I go 6 days a week and the nurse watches me take it. So if they're not specifically testing for that, it's not going to show up in my screen. I just wanted to state that.
Well, do you understand from the testimony of the worker that your recovery center doesn't seem to be sharing all the information with her? Okay, is there any way that you can sign a release and talk to them so she can get all the information, not just bits and pieces? Do you think you can do that?
Right, but they're very, very strict, but I can at least get, I think I provided a thing before about my attendance and about some of those things. But as far as the drug test I take for Catholic Charities or for Family Services, if they're not testing for methadone, it's not going to show up in a standard test is all I was saying.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I have no further questions.
Okay.
Questions, Ms. Thomas?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Brooks?
No,
Ms. Heiss?
No, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any other witnesses, Mr. McFarland?
No, thank you.
Mr. Brooks?
Mr. Zavala, do you have anything you want to tell the court? Are you there, sir?
Well, he's muted. There was quite a bit of noise coming from his end, and I think he's having a little trouble unmuting.
Hello?
Is there anything you would like to tell the court, Mr. Zavala?
No, I just want to advise them that, well, no, I just want to tell them that personally, I'm doing everything I can here, going up all these programs that are available for me. And as I wrote a letter not too long ago saying that my hands are tied here in prison from the world outside, but I'm doing anything that's available for me to separate myself and reunify with my child once I get released from prison. I'm doing pretty much what I can.
Okay. Okay, thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have no other witnesses to present, Your Honor.
No witnesses today, Your Honor.
Comments, Ms. Holmes?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Brooks?
Well, I think Mr. Zavala's right. His hands are tied where he's at. There's a limited amount he can do, and he's in prison until, at least, as I understand it, October of 2024. So, doing the best he can, but there isn't much he can do. So we'll see what happens.
Well, Your Honor, my client is an addict, and there is some relapse that I think is anticipated. She sounds as though she's pulling herself up by bootstraps, so to say. She has money saved up to take care of the driving license issues. She now has employment, so I think this next 90-day review will truly show us what direction we're headed in. Thank you.
No comments, thank you.
Well, the court finds all interested parties were given notice for purposes of today's review hearing. The case has proceeded from the initial disposition since January of this year. We've had a number of review hearings, and it is time to schedule this case for a permanency planning hearing. So our next review will also be a permanency planning hearing. I can see Ms. Smith making some progress in some areas, and also clearly continuing to struggle in significant areas, including substance use. As a result of that relapse in May, she was not able to attend the bonding session through the CTEC evaluation. So that was an unfortunate intersection between that particular challenge and the needs of the child, and the needs to evaluate that particular section of this. The bond between the parent and the child is of extraordinary importance in these cases, as it is a consideration moving forward as to whether or not there should be a termination of parental rights in the event that services are ineffectual. So obviously this child is very young, and as a result of recent analysis, it's been discovered to have significant needs, cognitive delays, speech delays, PT, OT, and all kinds of specialized care is necessary for him to even make progress on the long road to developmental milestones. So transportation is not just an issue for mother and her own barriers to reunification, but it will also be of extraordinary importance to tackle that so that the child would be able to get to the services that he needs. I also need mom to continue to be dedicated to looking at employment seriously in a way that will show us that she's able to support herself and her child. I'm glad to see that she has a significant other in her life that is considered appropriate by the department, and hopefully will be a support to her moving forward. So there are some encouraging bits here, and also some challenges still clearly in place. The child is not able to be returned to the father, who is currently incarcerated and appears to be undertaking some programming there, which is great. Ms. Kristen Smith, we would ask you to do what you can to identify what he's undertaking at the prison. And report on that for us at the next review hearing as best you can. I know that can be very challenging sometimes. The child cannot be returned to mother either at this time, again, for that transportation challenge, but also that Brief relapse is a setback. This child has high needs, needs high parenting skill abilities, and she's making some progress on her parenting, but we're not there yet. We also need to see employment stabilize for her. And a serious period of sobriety. 45 days is not enough as far as this court is concerned to establish a pattern of sobriety and reliability, especially for a child with as high needs as we have here. So I would encourage mother to tack on to what she reports as her own period of sobriety as a month to the next 3 months in an effort to show us a minimum of 4 months of sobriety. And that's giving her the benefit of the doubt that that test on July 7th was not actually positive. And I have my concerns on that point as well, that it was. But nevertheless, the child is safe, is in the least restrictive circumstances with family, seeing grandparents as well, and mother as much as possible. And that's where he will remain. That is the safest and least restrictive pending further proceedings. We'll have that permanency planning hearing and the next review in October on the 17th at 2:30 p.m. So unless there's any questions, that's all for today. And we'll see you October 17th at 2 o'clock p.m.
Can my client participate by Zoom again, Your Honor?
Yes, I would far and away prefer if she's able to make it in person, especially since the connectivity is glitchy at best. And it tends to be difficult to understand her, given her rate of speech.
Yeah, it appears frozen occasionally now. So.
Yes, so I prefer in person if she can manage that, but if the transportation barriers continue to persist, I understand if she needs to hear by Zoom.
Thank you.
Certainly, efforts for reunification are being made, and Ms. Heiss is in satisfaction of her obligations as well. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.